It's 2024, people, and we're diving into episode 60. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Night Force Optics. Night Force is a leader in the optical market with rifle scopes, spotting scopes. They've got cutting-edge reticles. One of our favorite scopes is the 1 to 8 ATACR, 1 to 8 by 24. Just an amazing piece of glass. They've got amazing clarity. You will definitely pay for it, but it's a premium product. If you want to drive a Ferrari, you got to pay for a Ferrari. So amazing glass. Can't say enough good things about the durability and the performance of their products. They were down selected. The 1 to 8 was down selected by US SOCOM. I believe their 4 to 16 was as well, with the Tremor 3 reticle. So they have amazing products, several different types of rifle scopes, several different types of spotting scopes. They've got education and a great website. So go check them out, nightforceoptics.com, and on the gram at nightforceoptics. Okay, we are getting into a podcast with my good friend Todd Hodnett. Todd and I have some long history together, and we met, I think, back in 2004 timeframe when he very first got into training military units and started his career with training USMC SOCOM Detachment 1, which was the predecessors to all things MARSOC. They were the OG gangsters of MARSOC. So that's how we met, and I ended up shooting Todd's course in 2007 at his high-angle facility in Utah and just have been a huge fan ever since. So get out your pen and pad. You're going to need it for this because we go super hard in the ballistic nerd paint. As a matter of fact, if at some point during the conversation you feel like you don't have any fucking clue what Todd's talking about, don't feel bad. That often happens to me as well. He's just a brilliant human being. So, and a Texas cowboy Albert Einstein of ballistics and long-range shooting, and he has done amazing things for that part of the industry. So I'm super excited to spend time with him and his son Colby, sit down, have a conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. So grab a beverage, pull up your chair, and enjoy this episode, number 60, with Todd Hodnett. Things are getting tougher when you can't get the thumb off the bottom of the barrel. Wide open, roar my future now. Looking fucking new. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know. Okay. SHOT Show 2024. Todd Hodnett, thanks for coming on the Lone Element podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I know we've been trying to connect the dots on this and been trying to do this for a couple of years now, but both of our schedules here at the show get pretty crazy sometimes.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so I'm glad we got it down. But I mean, you're retired now, right?
Yeah, Colby's taking over all the training, doing more consulting, that kind of stuff. Good. So we've done consulting with Accuracy First forever, but now we can actually be more implemental in helping those companies in a day-to-day instead of just, kind of part-time as we go. So doing that on the board of Staccato, working with those guys.
Okay, good.
So nothing slows down.
Yeah.
So it's busy.
So retired but not retired.
Retired but not getting to fish and hunt.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't that a problem? Because I think that's pretty much what you said you were looking to do.
Yeah. So that was the focus of retirement, but it hadn't worked out yet. So we'll see. Maybe a little bit more this year.
Okay. Good. Well, SHOT Show 2024. What do you? Well, I mean, let's first of all give you some credit where credit's due. I would say godfather of AKA the Christmas tree reticle.
The Christmas tree reticle, actually, Dennis Samet started it out a few years before, so a lot of the history people don't really understand. So Dennis was not a long-range shooter. So Dennis basically was involved in tons of other stuff, had a ton of money, had a card room, basically a small casino out in San Francisco. And so they would bounce around and do all kinds of stuff. So he ended up getting into one of his buddies. He was doing whitewater rafting and traveling all over the world doing it. And one of his buddies that he took with him said, "Hey, let's go to Australia and shoot donkeys." And he was like, "Why do you want to shoot donkeys?" He said, "Well, over there, this station, or big ranch in Texas, more or less, but they have like a 1 million acre station that somebody would buy, and all the indigenous animals are competing for the grass for the cattle, and the rancher needs to have more cattle and not as much of the like camels and donkeys and this kind of stuff competing for the grass, so he could pay for it. So they would go in and get rid of the donkeys to kind of knock down on the competition for the grass. And so they'd allow you to come in and hunt them, and it was kind of a sport for them. And so Dennis at first just went with his buddy just to kind of see it, and they got into it. So they started shooting them, and then again, like I said, Dennis wasn't really a long-range shooter, so he's just shooting them normal, and then that got real boring real fast for him. And so then he started shooting them only if they were running. And then the next year is like, well, we're only going to shoot them with pistol. And then the next year is like, let's see how far we could shoot them. So out in the middle of the desert, sitting around a campfire, he actually, again, not having a background in it, he had a crosshair, and he drew it out in the sand. He said, I don't get why they're in more lines. Like, instead of 5, dots for mil dots, why does it stop at 5? Why didn't it go down to 10? Why didn't it go down all the way out to the bottom? And why don't we have dots going left and right for wind, so we're not having to dial all the time? So what's unique is when somebody doesn't have a box to think in, you get to do whatever you want. You have ideas that, the common average shooter or trained shooter, military shooter, really wouldn't, jump into as a thought process, because you just accept what you're running and make the best of it. So he drew out a Christmas tree reticle and came home and patented it. And so he was trying to get it off and going, and I jumped in doing pistol classes. So from the cowboy action side, where I was doing pistol classes all over the United States, some Rangers came in and said, hey, would you do a pistol class for us? And I'm sure one of them's parents is probably shooting cowboy action. And they said, man, we took one of Todd's pistol classes. You need to really look at this. And I'm sure he thought, oh, yeah, cowboy action guy. So he brought me in. We did a pistol class. And at that time, they were having a sniper competition that weekend. He said, why don't you stay and shoot a sniper competition? I said, I didn't bring a sniper rifle. And he said, we got an extra. You can borrow it. And so it had, this was one of the guys there at the competition. And he said, I've got an extra, and I've got an extra A-Track PDA. And so I'm setting up trying to learn this A-Track PDA in the middle of the night, learning the reticle. I'd never shot it before. First time I pulled it out the next day was the first time I ever shot it. I hated it. It was too busy, just like everybody says. So it was one of those.
I can't tell you how many times I heard that over the years.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So it was one of those deals. Everybody hates it initially. Again, it's outside of the box for anybody else, so if you hadn't tried it. So I tried it, and I thought, all right, I don't like it. I'd rather have my own reticle, and then we're in competition with it. And so, but I'm noticing stuff. Other guys are taking longer because they're dialing. They're leaving dope on that in taking shots that was for a different range. They're making mistakes. I'm just holding this is easy, So I was like, all right, I can see some benefits. The ballistic reticle or the ballistic engine was something that was good to use, but it had limitations in it. So initially I was like, man, I wish it would do this. I wish it would do this. Again, outside of the box thinker, not having a, formally trained anything in long range. Had been shooting long range since I was 6 years old. But, Mom taught me to shoot a 22 with open sights and turn me loose, and little wild kid running out in the middle of nowhere, learning how to shoot, doing his own thing. Then had a regular standard duplex crosshair, doing that till I was probably 12, 13 years old, then started advancing into some other stuff. But at day 2, I noticed of this competition, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to buy one of these, because I kind of fell in love with it. Nighttime, you'd hear people over there trying to count their clicks up, and you couldn't have any white light. And people were like, 1, 2, 3, 4, and somebody else has got 27, 28, 29. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 8, 9. Oh, crap. All the way back down. And I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, as soon as he turns the light on, tells me I'm good, I ain't touching anything. So a lot of the benefits, second shot corrections, everything that, that as is good about Christmas tree grids, is readily available in the Horus reticles. And it was a patented deal back then. Nobody else could touch it. So I jumped in, shot that competition. I think I got 6th place. Had some stuff going on in my head. I just found out that morning my dad had cancer. At the time, they projected about 9 months to live. He beat it. It was fine. He died from it again like 20 years later. But that worked out at that time. So, I'm going through that. Got some mental stuff I'm dealing with. Shot pretty good in the comp. And they asked me at the end of it, a buddy said, hey, Sniper's Challenge is coming up in 2 weeks. Do you want to shoot in it with me? It was a partner match. I just met this guy, and he was funny. So I was like, sure. So I asked the guy, I said, hey, I'm just kind of getting into this. Do you mind if I borrow your rifle and practice? I give it back to you in the 2 weeks. And he said, sure, take it. He said, I'll get it from you then. Real nice kid. So ended up taking the gun home, ordering ammo, Black Hills ammo. I got it the morning or the day before I shipped out to go back down to the competition there in Stephenville. So I didn't get to shoot it at all, but I got to study and play with it a little bit. Going into that match, I won that match, and it was, I didn't know, but it was the biggest sniper match of the year. And then I won the next one, and then I won the next one down at Rifles Only. There was a series going on, you had to qualify, and they called it the National Championship, and I won it. And so then Dennis Samet from Horus, he called me up, the owner, and he said, hey, you're winning all these matches with our product. Would you be willing to do military demos? And I said, sure. You know, it's after 9/11. I was ranching and farming. I wanted to help out. So I wouldn't even charge him to go out and do training. I said, hey, you pay my expenses, we're good. So he'd send me out to, I think the first one he did sent me out to Pendleton. No, I'm sorry, Quantico. And go up there, of course, normal military stuff, and your Marine Corps especially. You go out on the range. I don't even know why they let me take my gun on the range in the first place. So, you know, they said, all right, hey, Todd, you're supposed to do this demo. And I said, yeah, can I get my gun? They said, your gun's not safety certified. You can't shoot it. And I'm
that
like,
sounds about right.
I came all the way out here to do a demo, you know. And so I said, of course, you know, normal Marine Corps stuff, you know, he was real straight-laced, and he was like, you can't shoot your gun. I was like, all right, can I put my scope on one of your guns? He was like, all right. So go over to the trailer, get a gun from the armor, you know, get it hooked up. Well, everything was so initially negative towards us even doing anything. I mean, we were invited into this demo, but very straight-laced, you know, so it was not going to be easy to get this done.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced the Marine Corps is not the most cordial organization out of all of them. Like, we do not like outsiders coming in and telling us like our own business.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So I ended up, I said, all right, let me borrow a gun. I'll put my scope on it. And so, that again, as you know, in the Marine Corps, if you don't have a 2112 mount the scope for you, you can't touch your own stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit more with Det One. So anyway, we go back in, and I put the scope on, and it was just normal Christmas tree grid, I think H36 or something. So we go out, and I start shooting or get sighted in. He said, all right, normal deal with the Marine Corps. Hey, you got 5 minutes to get sighted in. You got to start your demo. So I was like, all right. So I put it on, I shoot. Well, M40 has a bias rail. All right. Well, I had a bias mount. So I put it on there, and I start shooting, and I'm like, where's this thing going?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I got to keep it quiet because, you know, not being safety certified on the other one, we got safety issues already, and I don't want to let them know that this isn't going to go like they think it's going to go.
Yeah.
So I find where my bullet's hitting, and it was like 7 mils, 8 mils up the reticle. And so I get it left and right centered and just get it set up online, like 8, wherever it was at. And so I was like, all right, hey, I'm ready to go. He said, all right, here's your course of fire. Shoot. I was like, boom, 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 all the way out, like 700. Didn't miss. Everything was easy. And he was like, all right. He said, that was pretty good. And there was one problem. I think we shot out at 700, and the steel was dead. You couldn't hear it, and it wasn't painted. And somebody said, I think he hit it. And I shot again, and he said, I think he hit it, but I don't know. And I couldn't tell either. And so I said, hey, do you mind if I shoot that rock at the base of the target? And he said, okay. So I shot the rock and blew the rock over the berm. And he was like, all right, yeah, he's hitting the target. So he said, hey, I want you to teach that kid beside you. He said, I want you to teach that Marine how to do what you just did. I said, all right, now I have to confess something. And, you know, he turned and looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? And
I said, shit, what's this going to be?
I said, this is going to take just a minute. I said, I have a bias mount. You have a bias rail. It's not set up to do this. This scope will not. It was one of the old Horus scopes where Dennis actually bought scopes that didn't have a lot of come-ups on purpose because he wanted people to have to hold to get it into their heads. And so I explained it to the guy, and he said, I'm more impressed that you was able to problem solve and still go out and do what you did. I just had to shoot everything above the crosshair. Same thing, shooting below, you just where's your starting point and know where it is, do a little math. And so we went through that. Well, the young Marine did a good job, shot through it. Met a guy named Alan Boothby, which at the time was a major. I can't remember. He was a sniper as well. I was always at the sniper school running around with Robbie Reedsman and the guys. So
I know Reedsman.
Yeah. So, Reedsman's awesome. Great guy. So, but Boothby set me down, and we kind of went over things ballistic engine-wise, kind of explained everything to him. So it was a good first meet with the Marine Corps. Everything went extremely well. And then I guess it was at a SHOT Show, the last day of the SHOT Show, I was asked by Horus, and of course we had months of prep. So this was before the PSR. It was a pre-PSR before they knew what the PSR was. So, the new long-range weapon system. So everybody was supposed to go down to Yuma and shoot through the Doppler. And so I was practicing. It's 500,000, 1,500, and 2,000. Well, 500 and 1,000 and 1,500 wasn't that tough. 2,000 was getting into transonic. There was a lot of stuff going on. We were shooting 338 Lapuas, and at that time, about $6 a pop. Well, Dennis sent me down tons of ammo, and I worked with Lapua forever, and so I had a lot of Lapua ammo.
Yeah, that's what you were shooting when you were still shooting that in 2007, I think, when I came out to Happy Jack to shoot.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I was a big proponent of 338 for the military. Of course, there was only a handful or a very small group shooting it at the time. Everybody's still on 308, 5.56, that kind of thing, and some 300 Win Mag, in there for the long range capability. But we jumped in and we started shooting. So I left the last day. I was first shooter at the not a demo, but at the thing that they were putting on to see what was out there. And so there was a guy from Horus. He went in and did the talking to kind of explain everything. So I lay down, first shooter. I'm the only shooter that day. So everything really kicks off the next day. But I was first. The winds were howling. So I was like, I practiced and practiced and practiced. And we can kind of get into all the little problems that, that we ran into going up to this. And so I was shooting two different weapon systems. One was a Blaser at the time that Dennis had sent down to me. So I'd set up, and they said, all right, you got 5 minutes to get ready, and it starts, and, you're going to be over in X amount of time, like 15 minutes, we're going to be done. And I said, all right, sounds fine. So before that, the winds were gusting from like 7 to 17 mile an hour, and pretty rapidly, full crosswind. And so I was like, man, this is going to be crazy shooting groups, because at the time, the military didn't understand you don't test a weapon system by how well a shooter calls wind. All right, so we got rid of that. That's fixed now with Kevin Owens, working with G8 at the time, and even when he was teaching or running the sniper school, Range 37, I worked with those guys to make them understand, even when they came out with the 300 Norma, or we were testing for what weapon system we were going to do, but how we would test weapon systems for the ASR. And so, actually, we kind of looked at the PSR, but the PSR I was just brought in as a shooter. By the time we got to the ASR, we really were working with the government, helping them set up these requirements and how we test stuff. So we ended up shooting. I built a wind mapping capability, so I actually timed the wind. So I'd look at my Kestrel and I'd go, all right, the wind's blowing 7, and I'd just start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and it changed. So I'd write down 7 is 3 seconds. And so I do that, and it didn't matter where it went to or anything. I just look back over around. Now it's gusting up to 17, 1, 2, and it changed. And it's 15, 1, 2, 3, and it changed. So I found that it stayed at 9 mile an hour 50% of the time. And it gave me it would stay there longer than my time of flight to the target. And that was what I was really interested in, because I wanted it to be even airflow all the way down. And my spotter was let's just say, incapable. So he was out there. He's the guy doing the talking for Horus at the time. So he got over and he was going to spot. I said, no, I just grab the Kestrel, point it into the wind, stand over my back, and when it hits 9 mile an hour, tell me to fire. And so we get up and we shoot at 500. And this target's it's a large target. So it's probably larger than an IPSC, and it's setting up in the air. This is my recollection. It'd be like 10 foot up in the air, maybe. It could have been 15 foot up. But it was a fairly large target way up. I mean, you weren't going to get any splash. You weren't going to see anything. So I took a shot, and the Doppler at the time said, all right, impact on the ground, 432 meters. I was like, dude, that's like 40 mils below the target. And so now I'm thinking somebody's messed with my equipment, so, and, I'm new to the group. I don't know if, there's not just SEALs there. There's Navy, there's everybody. So, and I'm like, I know they're here to see the best stuff. So there's not other vendors here. So I don't know who would have messed with my stuff. So I sit there and I go, all right, let me shoot again. Boom, same thing, impact 432 meters on the ground. And so I said, all right, something happened in shipping. The scopes broke, something's wrong. And I said, is it okay if I pull my other weapon system out? And they said, yep, but it's on your time. You better hurry. So normal. So I said, all right, grabbed my gun, got ready, said, all right, send it, boom. And the guy said same thing, impact 432 meters on the ground.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, one of the SEALs got behind me, said, hey, let me spot for you. And I said, please. So he jumped back behind me and got on glass. I sent around, hit the middle of the target, so he said. And he stops the whole test, and he said, hey, guys, he's hitting the target. He said, go down and pull the target. So they drove down there, pulled the target, brought it back, and I had a nice little group, center of the target. And then the guy running the deal, I won't mention his name, he goes in and eats ass out on everybody in the barn that's running the Doppler. So we have to stop, fix the Doppler. Then we get back up and we're rolling. So we shoot 500, shoot 1,000, ended up shooting extremely well at 1,000. The wind mapping deal really worked. We shot a 2.5-inch group at 1,000.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then we jumped out to 1,500, shot a good group at 1,500. They told me what it was. It was sub-minute. It was good, but it wasn't quarter minute. So, but I didn't expect quarter minute. So, but it was a real good group there. And then I'd practiced for a month, and I mean thousands of dollars, 338 lapel ammo, shooting groups at 2,000, and testing temperature sensitivity and how to maintain stuff. And we didn't have the technology back then to have little coolers that kept everything at the same temperature and all this. And we didn't, I didn't have the capability to talk with, even though I worked with Lapua, I was sponsored in Cowboy Action stuff from them. So, but I didn't know they had a temp sensitivity issue on their powder. But I knew I could control it, so I wore kind of like a back brace, but I turned it around this way and I'd put ammo inside of it, and my body heat would keep it the same temperature. And so I'd pull a round out and set it in, and I'd fire it. And I can remember back at home, I'd managed that side of the problem, and that was very beneficial for groups, because at 2,000, I was shooting average about 27-inch groups at 2,000. So not good, not bad, but not good.
What was your expectation, or what were you trying to get at 2,000 in terms of grouping size?
To be honest, if the gun will shoot a minute, and of course it'll do better than that, but if the gun will shoot a minute, sub-minute at 100, it'll do that at 1,000. And I was working winds, but I wasn't. I thought they would be smart enough not to look at wind drift in a competition from one caliber or something to another. But we would work very hard shooting in lower winds, just for groups. Elevation-wise, that's where we were getting about the 27, and it may blow out a little bit more depending on wind. But that was one of the things that all of a sudden, and I didn't have a brake on this thing. It's 338 Lapua. Didn't have a suppressor for it. It was just a competition rifle. So I'd get set up, and I'd shot enough, and I could feel that scope coming back and touching my eyebrow. And it was like, man, this thing's fixing to cut me if I get it a little loose. So I'd block out my elbow, make sure it pushed me back good every time. And because if you pull up like this, it'll break that shoulder back, and then you're going to get kissed. So I was getting set up, and I was pulling my head back, and I thought, man, this is a military test. A lot of people have a lot of money going in this thing. I need to shoot normal. I need to shoot right. And then all these groups kept getting big, and so I was like, all right, man, I'm going to pull my head back. And in my mind, I was like, get equal scope shadow, get your eye in the center, and, everything should be good. So I go ahead and shoot a group, go down there and check it, and it was like a 16-inch group. And I was like, oh, found the right ammo, because we were testing Ruag ammo, we were testing Lapua ammo, all kinds of 260 grain AP stuff, all over the place, testing different stuff. So I thought it was an ammo deal. So I run to the house, check which lot this was, see what other stuff I had shot in previous days, and I thought I had nailed down the problem. Go back out, super excited, get back up in the gun proper, shoot 27-inch groups. I'm like, didn't find it. I'm shooting big pieces of sheetrock, so I can mark them and keep kind of notes and everything. And I can remember one day I had people from NASA and there's a whole bunch of hire, for whatever reason, showed up, and they were wanting to watch. Well, they were down kind of close to the target, and not close, but down there with the guy marking. And so we ended up shooting a group and shot a stupid 7-inch group at 2,000. And I go down there and I look at it and I just start marking it up. We measure it and I just start marking it up and I didn't even write it down. And they said, "You're not going to write down that group?" I said, "The flyers flew into the group. Doesn't count. If I did that 10 times, that'd be a group. It doesn't work." So I didn't even want the information. It's a nice group. Should have probably cut it out and did something with it, but I didn't care. I was busy. So we ended up going back and shooting and found, again, everything blew back out when we got into proper shooting position. Come back then, discussed it because apparently I hadn't nailed down the problem, and then started pulling my head back again, get equal scope shadow and shooting. My groups went back down. So now I'm shooting 16-inch groups at average at $2,000. So then it made me think. I was like, all right, so I get up on the gun and move my head up and down a little bit, and I see my reticle moving. It's got parallax. Well, I couldn't adjust all the parallax out of that scope for distance. I could get it out at 1,000, but it wouldn't allow me to get it all out at distance. And so from that day forward, we've always taught to shoot with scope shadow. Now, not as much as I was using at that time, but what we were doing now is just a hazy fuzz around the outside. And me and Colby have talked with companies, optical companies in the government. If we could just have a way to make sure your eye's in the same spot every time, it would remove the need for setting parallax. Because if you set your parallax, you're up on a building and you got guys moving down the street, and say they're 300 meters out, and you set your parallax where everything's good and clear at 300, but 700 meters down the road, a guy with an RPG steps out. You need to take that shot now, but your parallax isn't set up for that.
Right.
So if it's not set up for that, that creates a problem. I mean, we get more problems with people not having their parallax set correctly. And I've got a good buddy that does some teaches, and he says, you can't miss for misaligned parallax. And I'm like, no, you can at 400, but you can big time at 1,000 and beyond. So it's one of those things that if you pull your head back just enough to get a little bit of scope shadow, if your eye's in the center, it removes all ill effects of parallax. You may still have parallax misadjustment in the scope, but you'll never see the ill effects of it because your eye's in the center. So we went through, and then it was a teaching point from then on. But we started out there. Then,
what year was this, Todd?
It had to be, I think that test was 2004, actually. So I was just getting in, doing a couple of demos. At that point, right then, at Yuma, Det 1 was there. And they came up to me and they said, after they told everybody what the groups we shot, and they was looking at stuff, and nobody was really using ballistic engines, and certainly not other than one unit using the Horus reticle in the military. And they said, "Hey, would you come out and teach us how to do what you're doing?" And I said, "Sure." And they were like, "How to use the equipment, PDAs, all that stuff." And I said, "Yeah, I'll come out." And so I go out and teach them for a week, and we have a really good time. Guys are awesome. And at the end of the week, Chunk said, "Hey," one of the Marines, he's one of the bosses, he said, "You're really not teaching us how to shoot." And I said, "No, I'm a cowboy. I'm staying in my lane. You asked me to show you how to use the equipment. That's what I'm showing you." And he said, "Would you change anything about the way we're shooting?" I said, "Yeah, I'd change a lot." And he said, "All right, on the board, write it down." So I made a big list of everything I thought they were doing improper. And he said, "All right, we want to hire you for a month." Well, I said, "All right, long story, we won't go into it now. We wouldn't have the time, but trying to find a place that would allow me to go in and teach the Marine Corps on somebody else's property. They would actually go out and shoot some on other ranges that were run by other groups, but they would never allow me to set foot on the property.
Yeah, it was really early on in the war, in the GWAT, and we were still very much regiment in our ways. And just for those of you listening that don't know what Det 1 is, it was the MC SOCOM, Marine Corps SOCOM Detachment 1, which were the predecessors to what MARSOC is today. Basically the plank holders and the godfathers of where MARSOC has evolved to. And it was a 86-man detachment. I think it had 32 reconnaissance Marines, had a headquarters element, and then it had an intel fusion cell with SIGINT capability and language capability and human intelligence capability. And it was just a small little detachment that old Rumsfeld said he wanted put together and tested. And so that was our first crack at special operations in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, Colonel Coates was huge in getting that set up. He was colonel running the thing. and he was trying to prove that, all Marines were not equal. Some were actually better than others, and of course the Marine Corps was like, no, everybody's good. So, but he proved it, and it stood up. Probably ran for 3 years.
Yeah,
and then was disbanded. And then after that, and they weren't looking to stand up MARSOC at the time. They were just looking to see if there was a Tier 1 capability inside of the Marine Corps. Once they understood that there was, then it was like, all right, hey, we're going to start this deal. We're going to start MARSOC. Threw the Det 1 guys to the Four Winds, and they landed wherever they landed, which was, in a way, good because it took the maturity and senior individual and put them around with different younger Marines that they could grow fast, but they really should have kept those guys together and built MARSOC and just extended what they were doing.
Yeah, I think Bob Coates, Colonel Coates, his vision for it was definitely a JSOC representation for the Marine Corps, and what he had initially envisioned was a 200-man West Coast detachment and a 200-man East Coast detachment to augment JSOC, not SOCOM. So Rumsfeld had other ideas, and Rumsfeld was like, nope, this is going to be a 3,000-man detachment. It's going to be, another Ranger regiment. It's going to be another, ODA, or Special Forces group, or another Naval Special Warfare. He was thinking big picture, and, Colonel Coates was thinking, no, this is, and I think they could have easily, if they would have kept those guys intact, they could have easily played at the JSOC level, because a lot of those guys from that detachment went on to JSOC selection processes.
Absolutely.
And they passed and finished out their careers in special mission units.
Yep.
So that's testament to the caliber of guys that were in that detachment.
Yeah, and we've worked with everybody, and that was actually one of the best groups I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
I mean, they were of that cloth.
They were great.
Awesome.
Great dudes, yeah.
Awesome. So,
a lot of good friends there.
Yeah, anyway, so we go back. They asked me to come out about day 3 while we're on the range shooting. A gentleman comes up, Buck Doyle from Recon, and he was like, hey, just wanting to watch what y'all are doing. So he watches a little bit, and of course, I brought out ammo for the guys to shoot. That's not legal to shoot on the range. It was a little pool of ammo. It was good. Better ammo than they were shooting.
Right.
But we got this big guy walking in, and hide the ammo. So we're sticking it under mats. Well, then when Buck walks up, we continue training. And so we go through that, and I was just showing them difference in BCs and capability of what stuff was, giving them some understanding on ballistics with that ammo. So we go up, and Buck says, hey, can you come back in 3 weeks and train my guys? And so that was the actual first paying group that I had from the military. And then Det 1, when they saw the list, said, we want to train you we want you to come in for a month and teach our guys. We went up to Utah to my high angle facility. A buddy of mine owns, awesome individual. I'd love to throw his name out there, but I won't. And then we started using that facility. We stayed up there for a month. Their guys rotated through 2 weeks and then 2 weeks and got everybody trained.
Yeah, that's the same facility I came out to in 2000.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And is that are you guys still using that?
Yeah. So the individual had a stroke.
Okay.
And he was down yesterday. Got to see him again. Awesome to get caught back up. But he really doesn't have the capability of me he loves it if I bring the military guys in. But one of my instructors was doing a civilian class up there, and the guy was shooting like a 50 cal, and his wife has Meniere's disease, so it really rattles her box, and basically got all the civilians kicked off the property forever. So now it's just military only, but we really don't need it. And so we can get into that too, and just a little bit of why we don't. That the high angle aspect of it is good to see, good to understand. Norway came in. It's like, Todd, we want to spend they were saying 2 weeks. They wanted to spend 7 days in Texas and 7 days in Utah. I said, hey, tell you what, why don't we spend 4 days in Texas and go to Utah, spend 4 days, and come back to Texas and spend 4 days, because we miss for wins. We don't miss for high angle, ever. Yeah. So, and they said, no, we want to do half and half. And I said, I tell you what, you spend 4 days in Texas. We go up there and spend 4 days. If you want to stay there, we'll stay there the rest. We'll stay there another 4 days. And they said, so I kind of tricked them into it. They said, okay, we'll do that. Yeah. Of course, we go 4 days, drive up, spend 2 days. We shot one day, shot the morning, and their boss came up and said, can we go back to Texas? I said, yeah. So we drove all the way back to Texas to get wind training.
Get wind, yeah.
Yeah. So it's we'll cut back into that in a minute. So we ended up doing the training for the month with Det 1. Awesome group of guys, still love them. Run back through, trained Buck's guys, came back out there with Recon, and really for the first, I want to say, had to be 6, 7 years, we were more Marine Corps specific. We trained state platoons. We went to Kuwait. And so it was very heavy Marine Corps oriented there for a long time. Did a lot of training, more in Pendleton than we did Lejeune by a large bit. And then we'd still go up to Quantico and train the guys up there, work with the schoolhouse, the advanced schoolhouse. Tons of friends. Even when I was in town in D.C. On other business, if I had 2 hours, I'd run down there and knock on the door, and they'd open it up, look outside, and they go, "Hey, Todd's here." And so Gunny would be like, "Hey, go to the podium right now." And say, "All right, what are we teaching?" He said, "Whatever you want to teach." And so I'd go up, get on the podium, I'd teach for 2 hours, and I'd go back and catch my airplane. So we had a really good relationship, just information sharing. So in Reedsma, he was such a unique individual. Being the boss there, as soon as I got there and started teaching, he'd grab a notebook, sit in the back of the class, and take notes. And then we'd talk on the side how to change classes, what could be taught better, that kind of stuff. So great, love that group of guys. So, and I mean, there's so many of them still close friends with from that place. But we'd go out and teach at the schoolhouse there in Pendleton as well, and then with all the 1-5 guys and everybody. So even out 3-4 guys out at Palms, and so it was good.
And so the Marine Corps is kind of where you landed and started validating these all the stuff that you figured out with in terms of long range ballistics and the power of what this reticle could do.
Yeah.
And translating that into tangible techniques for snipers, and then it kind of just took off. It took off like like
so what happened immediately after that? When I say immediately, in that first year, I was brought out to Fort Bragg, and one of the guys in this unit showed me a reticle. It's H-27, so he had helped kind of design for his group this H-27 reticle, which was less busy. It would go out 2 mils on each side, and it was kind of scattered down, really didn't go very far down, but for their mission set, it was more of what they wanted. And it was a reticle that I would always pass around. So if I gave you like an H-36 and you looked at it and you'd pass it off, and I'd go, "What do you think?" And you go, "Man, it's busy." And I'm like, "All right, what do you think of this one?" It'd be the H-27, a lot more slender. And so you go, "I like this one. Can I shoot it?" Because you knew you had to shoot one while I was there. So I'd give it to you, you'd put it on your gun, you'd go shoot it, and then in a minute, the wind's picking up, now it's blowing 25 mile an hour, and you're like, "Hey, do you have one with a little bit more grid, on the sides?" "Well, that's one I showed you a while ago." I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I've got this one." And you're like, "Yeah, I'll try it." And you throw it on. Now you're shooting in winds 20, 30 miles an hour, and you're happy you get it. So, but it's that baby step process. Well, I saw some stuff in the reticle that I wanted to change. And so I talked to Dennis Samet, the owner at the time. He's passed away now. So I talked to him, and I said, "Hey, I want to redesign some reticles, and I've got some other ideas." So I made the H-58, and it was the first reticle adopted by the military. And then the H-59 just gives you a couple more mils on, one on each side. So it's not a big change, but I implemented my 12-inch drill. So it had the stair steps up on top. That was huge for the military because basically it gave us the capability to do their job, shoot people at 600 meters very quickly with a quick flash meal. So
how are you like? Because I remember I asked you one time, and it was years and years ago. I think I asked you during the course when I was there. And I was like, "Todd, how do you come up with these formulas and these reticles and stuff?" And you were like, "Oh yeah, I got lots of road time driving around.
Yeah.
I got my little knee board, my little pilot knee board, and I just do math and I come up with these things." And I'm like, "Oh, holy shit!" So like, you literally are just driving from training session to training session, thinking about all the after actions, and you're just making modifications.
Well, and a lot of it comes from just problem solving. Yeah. So I look out and I'm trying to see what I don't like, when I'm watching something, and then try to figure out a way for it to be done better. So it's just like the quick win formula. I'm driving to Pendleton from home, but I'm going through El Paso, and I'd been out there watching these guys, and they've got this little formula. And the Marine Corps was a little bit ahead of everybody else. They had these. If you're shooting from one range to a different range, you'd use one number. So you do this multiplication formula and get a win call. But when you went from a different range or distance-wise to another range, you might use 14. The first one was 12, and the next one's 14. So they knew their math was off, and they fixed it themselves, and put in these little numbers in their formula. And I was like, "Guys, the target's gone. By the time you do all this math."
Yeah.
And so, but that was why every sniper, he'd lay down, get his logbook laid out, put his calculator here, his calculator stayed in the logbook, And when he's getting ready to shoot, he'd gather up his deals, see what his hold was, and he'd shoot. And I was like, it's taking forever. So I came up with a quick win formula. So I'm driving about 2 o'clock in the morning outside El Paso to Pendleton and, doing math to stay awake, and came up with this formula. And basically it was a formula that was very simple. It's whatever your range is, that's your hold. The only thing ever changed was whatever mile an hour your gun was. So a 308 ended up being a 4 mile an hour gun, meaning if 500 equals 0.5, so 500 meters equals 0.5 mils at 4 mile an hour. So if the wind's 8 mile an hour, it'd be 1 mil, just twice your range. Very simple, no calculator. And then, same thing, 300 Win Mag would be a 5 mile an hour gun. And so I taught them how to go through and figure out what your gun number was. And then the math just got easy because we're really good doing any kind of math up to 4, to where you can half it, quarter it, that kind of stuff. But we can't do a lot of stuff in our head without that calculator. So the quick win formula was adopted by nearly everybody at that time before we got into the wind dots. Go ahead.
When was it that you figured out how to true the rifle? Because you were the first person to teach me how to true a gun.
Yeah, so when I was shooting that competition, that first one that we talked about, so I went to shoot the competition, and I've got this Kestrel. Kestrel. It was 1-2-3 Palm Pilot.
Yeah, it was a Palm Pilot.
Yeah, it had the battery exchangeable batteries. Neat little deal, but if it got too hot, you had to put it in a bag and put it into ice cold water to be able to see the screen. So, and then we moved to the TX Palm, but that's old school stuff. Basically, what I found was everything was not matching. I would shoot through a chronograph, an Ayler 35, I think, at the time, standard. And, that's what everybody had. So really good equipment. We knew the muzzle velocity. The BC was what you pulled off the box, or what they told you it was. And you could hit out to X, and all of a sudden you wasn't hitting. So I would build one gun in my Palm Pilot for one range, like 0 to 500, and 500 to 700. I'd have to change some stuff. And back then we were playing with, I didn't know. I didn't have the background. So I was playing with BCs. I was playing with muzzle velocities. I knew better than play with both at the same time. So I was like, how do I fix this and make it match? Well, I'd have 3 different guns in the Kestrel for the same gun, but just for different ranges. And so the way I looked at it is A plus B plus C equals D. D is impact. That's the actual real hold. That's the hold your bullet told you. So that was the key thinking point. So when you take D, the impact, minus C, density altitude, known, we got a Kestrel. All right, minus B, which is a BC, we thought we knew the BC, and we can get deep into that. We thought we needed the BC, and then A was the missing link. That would be muzzle velocity. So if I had 2 knowns that gave me my third known, impact, muzzle velocity, I'd just change it until my impact was correct. So basically that started truing. So I ended up working with G1s back then, and G1s just standard drag profile with G1s, G7, there's multiple, but usually G1, G7 is what most people know. G1s are more like pistol bullets, old school, more drag type stuff, where G7's a boat tail bullets that we currently use today. G7 is a much better drag model to use than G1, but we were using G1s. So, and I think at the time, you only had the option in the A-Trag to use G1. Later, we could use G7, but back then it was only G1s. Brian Litz was back in those days pushing G7. It was better, but in supersonic you'd never notice it. You're not going to see anything that much different. So we ended up playing with that, running those numbers, started truing. Well, in truing, it's like you can't true at 300 and 500 and 700 because every time you true, it just knows one. All right, so you've got a muzzle velocity. You don't have 3 muzzle velocities that you can play with. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, okay, where should we be truing? Well, cleanest flight path is anything without transonic shockwaves on it. So from my muzzle all the way to transonic, that changes, with every weapon system, density, altitude, anything. But at that transonic point, which is Mach 1.2, so the speed of sound is 1,061 feet per second plus temperature in Fahrenheit. That will give you a real close number to speed, or to the speed of sound, to Mach 1. Then we pull back to Mach 1.2. That's where the transonic shock waves start riding up on the bullet. So anything under that is acceptable, but you don't want to get too far away from it. So the rule was true at Mach 1.2 or within 10% of it. If you get within 15, that's okay, just because you may not have the range. 20 would be acceptable to do, but if you ever shoot out further? No, that's the real answer. So we started truing, telling guys, hey, this is all developed now into where it's in the Kestrel. You go into Calc MV and it tells you what your transonic range is that you need to be truing close to, and always true inside of that. And you plug in the range that you have at that time, and you just change your hold to match the hold that you actually hit with. And it will change your muzzle velocity for you. Done. Easy. Well, there's still people chasing BCs, but here's the deal. Now we have custom drag models through Dopplers. So if you start playing with a BC, a drag model, basically, and revert it back into G1 or G7, you're taking all away from this perfect drag model that is made for your bullet. Well, your barrel can change the BC of the bullet. I had, I think, 13 Mark 13 300 Win mags on the place, and we shoot to the Ayler 88. And there was one, and we actually was getting G1 numbers, and everything was .533. And I was like, wow, because that's what it stated on the box supposed to be. So I was like, man, this is everything's matching up real good. One gun didn't even make .5. So the barrel was destroying the BC on that. But you wouldn't know that unless you had, the tools, Dopplers and this kind of stuff. And so I took that gun as a test. I said, I know the BC's wrong on this. I'm going to still plug in .533. I'm going to true my muzzle velocity. My muzzle velocity is going to be wrong now, but it's going to be working with the era in the BC. And the guy was able to shoot all the way out and hit every target. So it wasn't changing anything. His win calls was the same. He's shooting the same win calls as his buddy.
And what year did you do all of this and figure this piece of the puzzle out?
Well, when I started competition, so 2003.
Okay.
All right, so that's when I set the rules on truing, and then me and Brian Litz, so later on in life, you just kind of skip around. We can go back and forth. I hit up Brian. I said, hey, Brian, I'm patenting a whiz wheel nomograph, and I said I want to use the applied ballistic engine in it at that time, and he said, oh, yeah, that's great. I want to be a part of this. It's cool. He said, all right, give me your parameters. I said, all right, I want it to fit in my hip pocket. I got to be able to carry it. And he said, okay. And I'm a pilot, so I've been a pilot since I was 18. I'm 60. So an E6B is a whiz wheel. Basically, it's metal, and you can figure out all kinds of wind speeds and fuel use and everything. So it's a flight computer. And so I took my E6B and I put tape all over it, masking tape, and then I took it out to the range. I went, all right, I'm shooting 500. And I'd shoot, and I go, yeah, 3.6. And then I'd turn it to 700, and I'd write down the number. Well, of course it was work. I was telling it the real answers, and then I got through that day, and I went, all right, there's a target. It's 800. So I turned to 800, it showed me the hold, and I took a shot, and I hit, and I was like, wow, this is cool. Well, obviously it's going to work. I was just not understanding the process of what we was doing, so I thought, man, this is good. I need to actually build a nomograph. So I went to Brian, and we started down that road, and he said, all right, what's your next parameter? And I said, all BCs, all muzzle velocities, it's stop. Now it's this big. And so I said, okay, one BC and a swing of 100, or I think 50 feet per second each way. All right, so a swing of 100 feet per second for muzzle velocity. He said, why do you want a swing of 100 feet per second? I said, so we can true it. He said, Todd, you can't play with math. So and being a rocket scientist, I mean, that's their Bible. Math is math. You can't just move numbers around. Right. So I told him, I said, A plus B plus C equals D. He said, yep. I said, D's impact. I said, we know the density altitude, correct? He said, yeah. I said, we know a BC. He said, yeah. I said, the missing link's A. I said, I'm not saying that your chronograph's wrong. I'm saying we manipulate the answer based off the muzzle velocity. And he was like, oh, my gosh, that's even better than G7. So he got it instantly. And so we built the chronograph, or the whiz wheel together, and still today have it and use it. But we don't have the real estate on it. So we couldn't go deep into transonic and subsonic, and the Kestrel's so much better. But I mean, if you're shooting in the supersonic region, with 308 out to 770 meters, this thing is a really nice tool. It's really quick. It's real fast. I had a SEAL out at the house one day, dropped his and found it in a puddle of water the next day after it rained all night, and we picked it up and beat it off, and it was still working perfect. And it worked for years, he said. So it's waterproof. It works really good. So it may fade in the sun if you keep it in the sun a little bit. So, but it's a great tool. But yeah, the truing started immediately in 2003, and then when I got with Brian, he agreed on the transonic. He said we need to be at Mach 1.2. That's where you true the weapon system. So 0 to 100, true at Mach 1.2 for whatever weapon range that is for whatever weapon system combination you have. And then he said, my deal was we true at Mach 0.9 and for subsonic. And then he said, if you're going to be 0.2 in front, you need to be 0.2 in the back, math guy. And I said, it's a problem. When you get down to 0.8, now you're shooting so far away, you may not be able to identify splash. And you may not, and as you know, a lot of shooters misidentify splash. Mm-hmm. So he may see the plume and go, oh, yeah, it was way up here, and really it hit here and skipped up. So misidentifying that can actually skew your information. So I explained to him. We went back and forth for a little bit, but we have now, I don't know, last 8 years or whatever, we've been on Mach 0.9. And so you true it transonic. And then when you true it transonic, you always come back in 2/3 distance and confirm. So if I'm truing at 770, I'm going to do a headshot at 500. If those match up, everything has to match up in between. You're just connecting dots on the algorithm the bullet's flying on. So using more science, because when I remember going to an SF sniper school, and you spend the first 2 days there shooting dope. And so you go through, taking the gun apart, the M24, putting it all back together, teaching all the reticles, everything. I mean, you know how it is, new kids in school, or new men in school. But they're going through this, learning different language. And so we take them out to the range. And my guy that I was instructing at the time, I was sitting there watching him shoot. He's doing a great job. His recoil management was good. This is the first time he shot a long gun. And so I expected to do some critique with him, but he was killing it. And so I moved over and looked through the spot and scope. He had 2.5-inch group, and I was like, he doesn't look like he's, shooting 2.5 minutes. So I really thought it'd be a half minute just watching him shoot. And I said, hey, what target are you shooting at? I really thought somebody else, I was looking at the wrong target. He said, top left. He said, my group's a little big. And I said, did you torque the gun down like they told you in class? And he said, yeah. I said, all right, hop off the gun, go get the tools. Let's take it apart. We're going to put it back together. And so one of the instructors walked by and said, hey, I got a dead gun. Get me one, coming from the armory. And so I jumped on the gun just to do a quick look and take a couple of shots, just see what was happening. And his reticle looked like it was, if a normal reticle is 0.1 mils wide, his looked like it was 2 mils wide. It was blurry and just stuck out. I was like, oh, my gosh. So this is a Leopold 2.5 to, no, it wouldn't have been, maybe 2.5 to 10. But anyway, second focal plane scope. So I'm dialing. And it's a Leopold, so it took a really long time. It was a 4-start scope. And that, we won't go into that, but that's on the ocular. So like a Smith Mender has a 12-start, and you just turn it this much, and it changes the focus on the reticle. And then the 4-starts just over and over and over. So by the time I got the reticle crisp, got on the target, set my parallax, or target focus, what I also like to call it, and I moved my head up and down. And I had a little movement, and I did a little fine-tuning and reset everything, moved my head, and everything was perfect, not movement, no movement of the reticle on target. And the kid walked up, and I didn't get to shoot at all. And I said, hey, hop down here and shoot me another group. So he hopped down, and I didn't tell him anything until he's fixing to shoot. And I said, hey, how's that reticle look? He said, same. His eye could change that quickly. So my eye, I have really good long-range vision. But as you can tell, I have to wear glasses.
I'm the same way.
So my eye quit doing this. All right? So it would not adjust for the reticle if it was wrong. His eye, instantly, his brain's like, hey, let's look at up close at this reticle. It's like, whoop, and get it in focus. Then he'd look at the target, and his eye would elongate and look at the target at distance. And so his eye's going back and forth as he's looking at his reticle, and that's where a lot of times you get that headache in the back of your head. And what I noticed is guys will go, hey, Todd, I was looking at the reticle, and all of a sudden it just got blurry and drifted off, but then it came back. He said, what's that? Is that coming off the can? I said, no. If the target did that, that's coming off the can. Yeah. If your reticle's doing that, that's your eye fatigue.
Yeah, eye fatigue.
Yeah, so we started going through that and teaching a lot of that in class, but that's still mine and Colby's biggest problem is parallax, teaching it, because these kids have really good young eyes, or young men have really good young eyes, and their eyes, it's hard for them to see misparallax adjustment. So Colby now has a dioptometer that an optometrist might use, and he can actually set it up for your eye and then set the scope up, and it's fabulous. It's a great tool. But continually, that was for 20 years one of the hardest things for me to do, And the only way that they can get that fixed is to make an adjustment with the ocular. Again, immediately correct and get the target in focus, and then move your head. Well, if you move your head, if the reticle moves on target, you have parallax, period. Fix it. Well, we're not the type of personality to sit there and play with stuff. We're on a range. We want to shoot. So he gets in, it's like, all right, I turned it a little bit, still movement. I turned it again, still movement. I'm going to shoot. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm hitting the target. Well, if he has a good cheek weld, he's consistent. All right, but what happens when he gets up and he's shooting off, or even if you change a little bit, move your body position, shooting at a distance target, or now you're shooting off a tripod, now you got a different cheek eye alignment, so and goes back into the old school. They didn't understand what it was. So I know you've heard this before. He's like, well, if you get the gun sighted in for you, it may not be sighted in for him. How does the gun know that? So that was the big deal. If the reticle is adjusted to the impact of the bullet at 100 meters, he doesn't know who's pulling the trigger.
Right.
So it's going to be correct. Well, everybody's like, that's not what I've heard. Well, I know me and my partner, he always shoots 0.3 high. Well, if you look at him, his cheekbone's way down here, so the alignment to the scope from where he was on the cheek is totally different. So both of them are doing technically correct. Both of them can shoot good groups, but his buddy's just always high, and so they're just consistent on the cheek weld. To place their eye in the same spot every time. Well, as you know, a lot of rapid shooting, combat shooting, you don't get to have that perfect alignment every time. So, but if you remove parallax or pull your head back, and when we say that, it's like instead of being here, be here. And so for the camera, instead of being this far back, you might be this far back, and that's it. So it's not like you see in pictures where the girls' heads, 14 inches away from the scope. But we started working on really that kind of approach to parallax and fixing a lot of the problems that we saw initially. And of course, this is just one thing. So it goes back into what we were talking about. The formulas started coming, working with, and the parallax was one of the initial things we really started teaching because it's a big problem that they didn't understand they had a problem. And then we started with the quick one formula, then the 12-inch drill. So I would go to these sniper schools, and they're going through these drills, and I'm sitting there, and they're timing them. You've done this stuff. So sitting there timing them, getting through these drills, and I'm like, wow, it could be so much faster. And so I started playing with formulas, and I can remember I was with 7th group out at Fort Bragg one time, and I was showing them the 12-inch drill and the 20-inch drill. So basically an E-type sideways and a 12-inch head up and down. And so I built the formulas for it, and so this is your 12-inch formula, and this is your 20-inch formula. And we set up all this still. And the first guy, a guy named Drew, I won't give his last name, he runs through, cleans the whole course. And we'd actually sat and drew pictures in the dirt and just taught it. So really simple stuff. And so there's a limit to range. It's about 600. You can get a little bit more, like 750 maybe out of the 20-inch formula on E-types. But, instantly, easy. The hold or the mill on the target told you what your hold was. There was no math. We weren't doing mill relation formula. So it was one number just equaled another number. So it was fast, it was easy, and the guys loved it.
Yeah,
so
you taught that. You taught the 12-inch drill in 2007 when I came out to the Utah training facility, and that was still to this day, that was one of the most formative long precision rifle courses I've ever done.
Wow,
it was still this day. I'm like, wow. Now let me ask you this, because I know this is a sensitive topic. And I know we probably can't go into too much detail, but you also taught
the. You ain't going into it.
Can I even say it?
No.
Okay, I can't even say it. Okay, so there was a formula. I'll speak very vaguely. And we can edit this out. Okay, so there was a formula, and can I describe how we shot? So let me ask you this: is it classified? Is it officially classified?
They looked at making it a classified formula, and ended up. Not, because then if I put it in the ballistic engine, you know what happens with secret stuff has to stay in the vault. You can't take it home, blah, 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 a lot of problems. We wanted to keep it away from foreign. So that was a big push. We tried to, it's still today the only thing when you go to a lot of sniper schools you have to sign an NDA on. You have to sign it on. Not for me. That's for them. So we tried to make sure. The problem is with social media today, you get all these guys come out and they want to make a name for themselves, and they won't give the formula, but they'll say, "Hey, look at what we can do. This is cool." And I'm like, "Hey, dude, a cowboy came up with that. If I came up with it, some rocket scientist is going to do this fast, and then we're going to have our boys getting killed.
Yeah.
So it was actually built for a clandestine mission at the time. So I had a buddy downrange. He called me up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this. I need this. I got this problem. This didn't work." And so I figured out the formula. The first formula, I don't know which one. Probably you may have been in the beginning of the current formula. I had one before then that I did backwards math to get the answer, kind of like A plus B plus C equals D. It was long, to the point that before I taught the class, I would go in the bathroom and study for about 5 minutes to be able to actually teach through that class. It was a long mathematical formula. So I'd go out and teach it. It worked. And then I was a long drive from Utah back to Texas, and then I had to immediately go back to Utah. There was some gear that they shipped to the wrong property. So it was a huge trip up there.
Well, yeah, I remember when you told me, you're like, and I said to you, because you're like, this is sensitive. You cannot share this outside this course.
I remember the conversation.
Yeah, and and I was like, okay, you got my word. And still to this, like I don't talk about it. I don't tell anybody about it. But like, I remember you doing the math formula. And I was like, Todd, you don't have to worry about me, dude. I can't. I'm too stupid to understand this math formula.
I think you're on that trip. So I went all the way back home to Texas and drove all the way back. Well, it's straight round trip, no stop. So I'm trying to stay awake, and I've got my dry erase pen, and I'm doing math on my window trying to stay awake, and came out with a much easier formula. Okay. And from that day forward, we've been teaching the easy one. It's simple, and that's what scares everybody. So I can remember going to everybody gets real sensitive about names and stuff. So especially Kobe, he'll start throwing stuff at me. So I went to a place, law enforcement place, and I'm teaching this. And the guys looked at me and they said, "Can you really do this?" And I said, "Oh, you're going to do it in about 10 minutes when we hit the range." And they all huddled up, and they said, "Hey, who are you teaching, this formula to?" And I said, "Every schoolhouse, every military schoolhouse, but it's military only. We don't talk about this." They went to the military schoolhouses and looked at it and had them do the NDA. So it's very protected. They tried to make it secret, pull back on it. Now they are currently looking at making it secret again to be able to prosecute the people on social media. That's what they're after. But there's other people that have theirs. So foreign groups come in all the time. We're training, people all over the world, and they'll be like, the 5 I groups, we can teach it too. Yeah. We get blessed off by other entities in our government, and they go, "Hey, yeah, they can have it. Only they're tier 1. So I can't teach a tier 2 of a 5I that formula." So, that's up to them. Yep. That's their deal. So we go in now. We teach it. I'll have foreign groups come in that aren't in 5I that may be sponsored by U.S. military to be there. And they're like, "Hey, can we talk about the formula?" I'm like, "Nope." And they go, "Well, we've got our own." And I'm like, "Great. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to see it."
Yeah, don't want to see it.
So we're not going to have that conversation at all. And it's not because we're super secret special anything. It's because I've been sat down and asked, "Please don't," and we do what we're asked not to do. And I don't want my buddies killed. Right. So I've trained 9,000 guys in the last 20 years, and I made some of my best friends in the world. Probably the top 200 guys are buddies that I trained. So I don't want to put them in harm's way. Yeah. So that's the big deal of why it's so super secret, and it's so stupid simple. So even Brian Litz, he looked at me because we was busy building the whiz wheel, and he said, "Hey, how about that formula?" And I said, "We can talk about it." And he said, "Can I put it on the WES?" So the WES is a weapon employment zone. It's comparative analysis from different stuff, air-to-air rockets and stuff, but we use it currently in small arms ballistics. And he said, "Can we put it on the WES program and compare it to real trig?" I said, "Man, absolutely. I'd love to see," because it's cowboy math. Yeah. And so I said, "I'd love to see how the real math actually works." I knew it worked because I'd shot it everywhere, and I knew it was perfect. All right, perfect. I knew it worked, and I couldn't see the error inside the noise of what was going on. And he hollered back at me, and he had all these printouts. He said, "There is one foot line that there's error, and it's the error of the width of the bullet, and that's it." So I had a whole bunch of guys coming in, and the only reason we really talked about it with Brian due to his skill set was I had I had a couple of Marines that were trying to come up with their own formula and said, "Well, you're not accounting for gravity in the first 10 yards or 10 feet or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not a problem." And so they were trying to push their own stuff out. And so and it's no big deal. Brian just gave me that piece of paper that I could give to the bosses and say, because actually at one time there was like, they were claiming we were pushing out something that was wrong. And then, of course, when you compare it to real trig and it proves it's right, all that other went away.
Yeah, I mean, I just sat back during the proliferation of, coming out and shooting the course in '07. I'd love to come out and do it again, see where it's at now. But like in '07, sitting through all of that, experiencing that, shooting that, like, and showing up with just the rudimentary knowledge that I had from the Marine sniper community, showing up and, the Marine Corps telling me for years, oh, this weapon system can only do this. Now I got this cowboy from Texas.
It's not just Marine Corps.
Yeah, he's like, got this cowboy from Texas, like, oh no, man, watch this, and you'd put an optic on a gun on a M40, and sit down behind it, and now I'm engaging,
out to a mile.
Yeah, I'm engaging a mile away with a 308 platform that they're like, nope, this is only good to like 900 yards on a point target.
We had the same thing with the SF. So the schoolhouse, so the guy that actually wrote the whole training scenario program, they asked him, they said, hey, can we put up some steel at the 900 bay or 900 berm? And he was like, nope, 308's not good for 900. Well, he left, and Kevin Owens took over. Now they're shooting clay pigeons at 900. He shows up on the range one day, and they're doing this. He's on the spot and scope, and kids are hitting the clay pigeons at 900. And he just laughs and goes, "You don't know what you don't know, man." So, and then he called me and actually apologized. So he wouldn't even talk to me. I mean, I'd go up and have to talk to him through a fence, and he would just tell me everything that I couldn't do, and not couldn't do legally, but couldn't do with ballistics and stuff. And he said, yeah, that Horus reticle, it can't do this, and it can't do this, and it can't do this. So all of a sudden, Sean Kirkwood actually came in and took over that whole program, and Kevin Owens was involved. And they brought in Sean to go to the school for a week before he took over the schoolhouse. And while we're out there, we're doing all this stuff. He said, all right, I'm gonna have you come in and teach all the instructors. And so I came in. I said, all right, this is what you've been told. You can't do this. So we're not doing any more instruction today. I want you to grab your gear, get up, load up. We're going to the range, and you're going to do all this stuff before lunch. And so we did. So we knocked out all the naysaying stuff and proved that everything that they've been told for the last 10 years was false. And then we started teaching. Yeah,
I used to laugh, and I used to get into it with people on social, like the early proliferation of social media, like, listen, the reticles are too busy.
Yeah.
It can't do this. It can't do that. Oh, these formulas are bullshit. How did he come up with this? It's nonsense. It doesn't work. And I would just smile and laugh because I'm like, no, it works because I've shot it.
Yeah.
I've been out there. I've shot it. It works. And and then what I used to do with guys that are like, oh, it's too busy, because I'd have guys come over to my house and they're like, oh, yeah, I heard you see these guys and you went out and you shot that course, and how was it? And I was like, fucking awesome, awesome. Oh yeah, these reticles are busy. So what I used to do is I used to walk the guys over to in my house. I had blinds, and I would just open the blinds until they were vertical, and I'd be like, "Can you see in the backyard? Yeah. Can you see that my flower garden right there? My ex-wife's flower garden? Yeah. What color is that flower? Oh, it's yellow. Okay, cool. Now, can you see these blinds right here? Yeah. Okay, cool. Can you look through them and still see what color that flower is? Yeah. So is my blinds busy? And they would just be like,
yeah,
that's when the fucking light bulb would come on.
I used to use the exact same analogy. Yeah. I'd be like, all right, you're sitting in the kitchen looking through these blinds, and I said, you're doing dishes, and a real hot girl drives by in a convertible.
Yeah.
All right, do you grab and rip it open, or do you even not notice that they're there?
Right.
And they was like,
Yeah. And I'm like, so is it really busy?
Yeah, and once you, the problem is, since it's new, they stare at the lines and not at the target. It'd be the same thing as putting a red dot on a pistol nowadays and handing it to a guy that's never shot one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be staring at that dot instead of looking at the target.
Yeah.
And so pretty quick, he doesn't want to shoot anything that doesn't have a dot. And really, that's what happened with the Marine Corps, or not Marine Corps. That's what happened especially with the Marine Corps. But then SF jumped in, and they started using it. The SEALs brought me out to Nyland, and I thought they were going to be the hardest ones, very close, even more closed in probably than the Marine Corps. And I thought it was going to be really hard to break through. Since we were able to break through with Det 1, which was these, the tier 1 guys basically. Everybody looked up to them, and there wasn't anybody in there that was a dipshit.
Right, correct.
Yeah, the other younger Marines, anything those more senior guys said, they'd listen to immediately. So we were able to utilize that with the Marine Corps and get everything adopted. And it was an easy steal for a long time. But when the SEALs brought me into Nyland, I said, all right, hey guys, you're not allowed to use a tree. You're going to dial everything. I said, just shoot crosshair today, and let's just walk through this normal. What I want to do is I want to take away that thought train that I was removing a skill set that they had. I was removing some capability. So once they shot for a half day using the crosshairs, I said, all right, now I want you to use the bottom. So you're not going to dial winds, you're going to hold. So now you're going to come in and you're going to hold elevation, you're going to hold the wind shot. So I would let them dial elevation and hold winds, but now we're to hold everything. But I wouldn't say anything about the wind dots. So this was, I believe, the Tremor 2 at this time. But they actually had to hold, and we'd talk through stuff. And then I actually taught them how to calibrate the wind dots. And I said, all right, now I'm going to teach you 12-inch drill. Well, the Tremor 2 has a unique 12-inch drill because it was basically, instead of measuring out here on the stair steps and figuring out your number, cutting it in half and using it as a hold. And I hid that stuff in there because if somebody got a hold to the reticle or saw it and copied one, I didn't want the formula to be obvious. Right. So if it lands on 10, cut it half, hold 5 mils. That's how it's set up on H58 and H59. And then the Tremor 2, I set it up on the vertical stadia to where wherever it fit, just pull trigger. Yeah, you're already there. So I still today love the Tremor 2. Problem was, since you showed the 59 first and you got such a ton of people that adopted it and love it once they got into it, when I showed a less busy, as you know, everywhere you go, it's like, it's busy, it's busy, it's busy. So the Tremor 2 incorporated my patented wind dots, which the patent part of that is they're not ballistic wind dots. They're actually calibrated, or you're able to calibrate them to your weapons combination of BC and Muzzwasi, basically time of flight. So that same reticle can work with any different caliber Muzzwasi combination BC that a ballistic reticle can't. All right, so I've done some stuff, patented some new stuff on ballistic reticles. That one reticle has worked with across 37 different calibers from 308 to 6.5 PRC, and done some really cool, neat stuff. You may be seeing that in some point coming up in the future.
So it hasn't been released yet?
Yeah, it's kind of the T8 that the military adopted, SOCOM did, and the LVPOs, but it's more, this is more of that. So I introduced that to SOCOM for G8 for that deal. They thought it was too busy for the assaulter to look at, and so we reduced it down way too low. Personally, I hate it because it takes away capability for the boys, and a lot of times they don't give the boys credit enough, and they said, oh, if it's too busy, you won't use it. Well, everybody that uses the other one, when they see the one that I did create first, they go, why didn't we go to this one? I love this one. I wish I had more wind dots, all this stuff. So anyway, that one may be coming out eventually. We've got the new Tremor 5 where we just got rid of the stair step stuff. So that's for competition guys and hunters. They're not killing people, so they don't need the 12-inch drill. So kind of going back into the formula stuff. So there's the 12-inch drill, the wind formulas, the other formula that we kind of discussed.
Yeah. The formula that shall not be mentioned.
Yeah. So, and again, it works. It's awesome. The guys love it. I would love to share it to the world, the hunters of the world and competition guys, because they're obviously not clandestine use, but there's a real reason they should have it. But in our current situation in the world, we can't share a lot of information with everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a great like coming out to the course. It was great because you blew my mind in like so many capacities. Back then where we did, just the basic like, hey, here's what the platform's capable of with this optic on it, this optic solution on it, and then we had a, then teaching the 12-inch drill, and then teaching, the secret formula. Yep. That one really blew my mind.
That's
like
cool.
Not the math like was crazy, but then like actually when we applied it and shot the drill. And I shot it, you're like, do this. Okay, hold here. Yeah, pull trigger. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're up on the newer stuff like speed drop.
Yeah.
And Kobe came up. I was in Australia teaching, and he called me up. He said, hey, Dad, if you dial down your speed drop number below 0, So if you're negative 2 gun, go from 0 down to, if you got a 12 mil turret, go down to 10. He said it turns your mil reticle into a ballistic reticle. So if it's 430 meters, you go 4.3. And I was like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was like, stop, don't teach that. And he said, okay. So I'm fixing to roll out early in the morning. So we bounce out and we go do training later that day. I'm doing the math, trying to figure out what he told me. And I was like, oh, geez, yeah, that works. And so I called him up and said, yeah, you can teach it. He said, don't worry, I am. So he was already teaching it.
He's already ahead of you.
But it's phenomenal. It's probably the fastest way that you can shoot with a mil-based reticle. It's insane. And me and him came up with a new formula probably just right after Christmas, where you take a muzzle velocity and BC and work it with the speed drop number. It gives you a speed drop number, the way we manipulate this, based on a quick math formula that we did. And then it has a density altitude chart. So I got a little card that you can just flip over and go like 2,700 feet per second, 0.6 BC, your 2.2 speed drop number. And there's a limited range that it works out to, but it's phenomenal now. So we're not using equations of motion. We don't have a ballistic engine. It's just the capability to have this card that you can flip, or we can teach it to you, real quick on your calculator and get these numbers. But we're trying to just make things easier for the guys and give them the capability of taking that shot quicker. But yeah, we're looking at different formulas or coming up with stuff. But it's usually not like the first crazy formula that you saw, the secret one. But what I turned it into is super simple. It's only got 3 numbers in it, and you're done. So it's super simple, super nice. But now we have accuracy first page that is listed in the Kestrel, and that page is also in some other products that give you that capability to run down and see your 12-inch drill, your aerodynamic jump, all that kind of stuff.
So I'm going to get beat up if I don't, ask you some gear-related questions. So the arguments that I constantly see online, or kind of like, and Cato and I have like lots of conversations about this, like a good optics setup for like not what I call like outrunning your headlights, like basically where you have a platform that's good to a certain,
so pick a range.
Ballistically. What length of barrel and like what optics setup do you find optimal for barrel length? So like,
I really don't. I don't care about the barrel length. What I'm really more interested in is how far we're going to shoot that caliber. So if you said, hey, I've got a 6 arc, big new hot round, it's a 308 and a 5.56, platform. Not saying it's bad. It's awesome, but it's not that awesome. So you're only going to shoot this thing out 700-800 meters probably until it hits transonic. It's 308 ballistics, probably 800. So take that 800. And then take 8, multiply it by 2.5. So that tells you what? 20, right? 20 power scope. That's what you need. So the 4-20 Night Force is the best scope that you're going to look at in that realm, because it has 38 mils of come up in it. It will actually focus down to 14 feet. So it's phenomenal. 14 meters maybe. But it's a phenomenal platform. That is probably the best. And it's the same size as the 4-16. Super short scope, great for small hunting rifles. So I was actually fixing to do a YouTube deal based on how do you pick a scope? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's the main question that I get asked all the time. Like, people are constantly like, okay, my gun is this long. Here's what I use it for. Here's what I'm thinking. And so, I think it still also boils down to like use case stuff. So say you're like a Mark 18 style gun that you're going to use for fighting, but you might want some extra distance. You might want to reach out on the edge of the envelope of what that gun can do. What would you recommend?
Well, there today, we have 1-8s, 1-10s, the LPVO world. I would probably personally stick something like that. I'm not going to put a 5-25 on the market, but maybe if I was going to use it more as a designated marksman's weapon system, a 40-16, absolutely. They've even got some little 3-12s that are really nice. I'm a power hog. I love power. I shoot a lot of 7-35s. I don't shoot at 35 power all the time. With my 35 power scopes, I'm a PID, positively identify the deer that I'm wanting to kill, make sure that it's not a 9-point, or make sure that it didn't break off a tip. It's a 10-point that was fighting and broke off a tip, and now I shot a good deer. I want to make sure it's a cull when I'm killing it. So I use 35 power, but I very rarely shoot at 35 power. So, I know Kobe shot a deer. We're not going to go into it how far, extreme long range. All right. And so he
was killing deer at 1,300 when he was, 7 years old?
Yeah. So, and my deal, people just go up in arms about this stuff, so we're not going to involve you with people bashing us for what we do. But we have to kill about 40 does a year and about $20 a year for management.
Yeah, for management. Yep.
So Texas Parks and Wildlife gives us permits. It's something that we're doing. When we came on the property, the average good deer was 165 inches. Now the average good deer is nearly over 200. And we've been culling deer for about 10, 12 years heavily now, getting rid of the genetics. So I'm just justifying why we do some of the extreme long-range stuff. So, I mean, we have deer feeders set up at 2,000 meters, and that ain't hard. That's not even a long-range shot. So it's something that when you're shooting at that distance, we need the capability with the power, the 35 power. But still, we don't shoot at 35 power a lot. But a lot of the times, people ask me, it's a really good question, what power do you shoot at? Even if you have a 35 power. And the more common is the 5 to 25 power scopes. So it's prolific across the military. It's one of my favorite scopes, has more come-ups than the 7 to 35. So when I'm shooting the power range that I'm running at is dependent on the distance of the target. So if I'm shooting 300 meters or 400 meters and I'm shooting a heavy recoiling system, I'm backing out my power where I'm not losing the capability of calling splash if I miss a target. And that's why I tell people, I was like,
or which way the target runs if you miss.
Yeah. So I said, shoot whatever you're capable of seeing your impact and making second shot correction quickly. If you can shoot up to 20, shoot up to 20. If you can't, pull it down to 15 until you get your recoil management figured out, and then you can bump it up. But I see so many guys that get on the gun, they turn it up to 35 power, and then they're chasing and looking and chasing trying to find the target through the scope at full power. And then there's a lot of other tools there, with the red dots you have on the side of the gun. You can adjust it, find the target, and then look into the gun, and that's great tools. Not saying anything bad about it. But I grew up hunting, so when I pick up a gun, move into a target, it's there. And I see guys all the time that have to turn the power all the way down, chase, find the target, then turn the power up. And I'm like, as soon as he pulls that shot off, he's going to be like, where'd I hit? Because he's not going to be able to see splash. Because when that gun moves, so you shoot at the power that you can manage the recoil on that platform. Like you said, that Mark 18, it's easy. You shoot at full power probably.